Good afternoon, good morning, everyone. Hello, Joshua. Welcome to the Melting Spot interview series. We're thrilled to have you.
Thank you for having me. Hi, everybody.
So, Joshua and I are both logging in from the West Coast, but not exactly the same one. So, we're on each side of the Atlantic. Thanks for waking up early in San Francisco to join us, Joshua. Very appreciative of that.
Happy to do
We'll
it.
be talking for a half an hour around building a community, scaling a community without losing a sense of belonging and fun. And we're going to talk about Asana, obviously. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them directly in the chat or the discussion panel on the right-hand side, and we'll try and answer them as we go. So, hi, Joshua. Tell us about yourself, where you're coming from, and about Asana as well, obviously.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. I'm Josh. I lead community here at Asana. I'm based in San Francisco. Asana's community encompasses our ambassadors, our community forum, and our series of global events. I've been at Asana for about 5 years. Prior to Asana, I led community at Evernote, where we had many, many customers because it was a B2C product all around the world. So I really love building community programs, especially for a global customer set. I love helping people all around the world feel connected to us and to each other. And that's really the goal of the Asana community, which is called Asana Together.
Great. Thank you, Josh. Just a very quick disclaimer: given that Asana is a listed company, we won't be dropping too many numbers. So if you feel frustrated, just drop us a line after the show. But we'll be discussing, by and large, any community topic at Asana. We won't be sharing too many numbers. Just managing expectations here. So obviously, you're coming from a B2C background at Evernote. Do you run a B2C community the same way or even do you run a B2C customer base the same way you run a B2B customer base?
That's a good question. To me, B2C and B2B are different in the sense that the audiences might be a little bit different. The types of things that you talk about might be a little different because the contexts are different. But the feeling that I want people to have when they're part of the community is the same. I want them to feel like they found a safe place. I want them to feel like they're able to connect with us on the team as well as with other people just like them all around the world. And most of all, I want them to have a good time because if they don't have a good time and it becomes transactional, they won't stick around. And so when I'm talking about the difference between B2C and B2B communities, I don't think that there's such a big distinction. I think it's a false distinction. I think programmatically, you want to make sure people have a good time, feel safe, and enjoy themselves. And so I approach B2B community building very similarly to how I approach B2C community building, with elements of surprise and delight thrown in. Because at the end of the day, even in a B2B context, there are humans, real life people who you want to be part of your community. And those people, shockingly, want to have a good time and enjoy themselves and have real reasons to keep coming back. And if you start treating them just like functionaries of their jobs and the community is all about just the facts, as it turns out, that's pretty boring. And I
Hmm.
don't personally want to be part of a community where it's boring. And I don't want that for my people either. So my approach is really, let's make sure that everyone gets what they need to get out of the community. We offer them lots of tools and resources and the things mechanically that they want and need, but we also make sure that we put a smile on their face, that they enjoy themselves, that they have fun. Nothing wrong with fun in a business context.
I like it. That's what we tell our team every day.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just because you're running a B2B community doesn't mean that you're actually playing with company logos, and that's fair enough. How did it all start? The Asana forum, the Asana ambassadors, the Asana Together community. How did it all start, and why did you start this community?
Yeah, so I was brought to Asana specifically to start the community program. When I arrived, they had just launched a community forum, but it sat in the support team, so in a completely different department from me. I'm a marketer. I sit within marketing. I report to the CMO. So the lens that I look at community through is all marketing. I realize, and our community does, in fact, have lots of other functions and results like helping with support and helping with pipeline. But the goals of our community are all around advocacy, awareness, and engagement. And so I was brought in to build our community to achieve those goals. And so when I came in, there was no ambassador program, there were no community events. I had to get a lay of the land to really understand what was the current state of our customer base. What did our customers who were enthusiastic about Asana want? What were they telling us? And so I asked them, if we were to build a community for you, what would you like to see? I asked around the company, what were some of the expectations from various stakeholders about what they wanted from community? One of the smartest things I ever did was in the early days of me being at Asana, I gathered all of the stakeholders in the community program from different teams around Asana in one room, had one giant meeting, and I asked everyone, let's brainstorm what the community program could look like. But the first thing I did was I went around the room and had each of them define what they think community was and what they thought community should do for Asana. And I think there were 20 people in that room and got 20 different answers. And the reason why I wanted people to see that was because there are such varying perspectives on what community can and should be. But from that meeting, I was able to help build awareness of how complex a community program might look and what some of the themes were from there that helped me figure out what the strategy and the vision could be for the program. And from there, we started building the program, the strategic elements, and then it took us some time to build all of the content because we wanted to launch with something that would actually be meaningful for people right away. And then we launched it with the ambassador program, and our community events series happened shortly thereafter. And then we folded in the community forum. And I think for a lot of folks, community forum is typically where their community program starts and ends. I think a forum is a really important spot, but it's reductive in terms of what it can offer. Because as it turns out, not everyone is a forum person. And if you only have a forum, then you're excluding a lot of people from your program. And so that was the genesis of our program. We started out with 0 members and 0 events. And now we have thousands of ambassadors all around the world connecting with us and each other, sharing ideas and tips. And we started again with 0 events. And my team runs now between 150 and 200 events just for the community each year.
Amazing, all around the world.
Yeah, we've come a really, really long way.
That's brilliant. We're going to talk about your on-site events soon, and especially one in Paris. I think you've
Please,
got a
one day
funny
soon.
anecdote to mention on that one. That's really interesting. So you grew a community from 0 to thousands. I think there's over 90 different geographies, 90 different countries represented among your ambassadors.
That's
So how do you actually how does everyone feel that they belong? How do you slice and dice your audience to make sure that people feel part of micro communities or smaller groups?
Mhm. Yeah, so to me, personally, I want to know for me when I'm joining a community that there's a spot for me and I can communicate the way that I want to communicate and that there's resources that feel right for me. And so when we created the community program here, we made sure that there were multiple ways that people could connect with us and with each other. So I don't believe in a one size fits all, put everyone in a forum or put everyone in a Slack group. Instead, we basically created a menu for people to choose from, like a buffet, and they can pick and choose the pieces that are right for them. So, just as an example, we have a Slack group just for our community members. We, of course, have a forum. We have ways that they can connect with us directly in Asana, amongst a host of others. We also have a variety of types of live webinars just for members so that they can get to meet us, get to meet each other, get to meet people behind the Asana product. All of the things that they told us that they want, but delivered through a variety of different media, because we know that some of that will resonate with some people and some of it won't. We just need to have a variety of things so that people can find their right spot. In terms of how we slice and dice, our community is global. As you mentioned, we have community members in over 90 countries. This is a lot of ground to cover. My team is based all around the world. I'm very fortunate that Asana has granted me resources and people to help me tailor the community program to meet the needs of people wherever they happen to be in the world. So, for instance, running community in Japan is significantly different than in the rest of the world. But what we do is we take the best of what works in the global program and give my teammate who sits in Tokyo license to tailor it and change it to better meet the needs of the people who are there. And so she runs the community program. It would look recognizable to anybody as being part of Asana, but the types of events she runs look a little bit different. Type of contests and promotions she runs look a little bit different because that resonates better with the people in that market. So
So
we try to
important
make,
to localize the content and the experience.
yeah, it's not just localizing the words. That's a piece of it, but it's really localizing the experience so that it's relevant in the local context. Another thing that we do is our events are global, they happen all over the world, but we don't run the same exact event every single place. One of the ways that we make it feel more relevant locally is that instead of saying we have a webinar, everyone around the world can come. Of course, anyone around the world can come to any webinar, everybody knows that. But what we do is we say this webinar is for Singapore. This webinar is for France or for Paris specifically. And then to make it feel extra local, we have custom illustrations created for our Zoom backgrounds with significant landmarks in each city so that people who attend feel reflected in what we're creating. And that makes it feel more special than just a standard run of the mill, everyone from
Yeah.
everywhere can come webinar. And so we're always looking for these little ways that we can make things feel more relevant and grounded for people wherever they happen to be in the world.
Yeah, it might sound like a detail, but it's actually part of the delight that you were mentioning earlier.
Yeah,
But
these
it's
details
funny.
become
It's
really important.
you'd expect any online event to sort of um, like push the barriers and be relevant and suited to anyone around the world. But I like the fact that you've actually made those online events local. That's super
Mhm.
interesting.
Yeah, we
We
actually cap the capacity pretty low because we want people to feel like it's a more intimate experience designed just for them locally. So this is, I think, the inverse of what I believe most people do with webinars. It's like, let's invite everyone, get as many people as possible. And there's
yeah.
certain instances where that might make more sense. For us, for this context, we want it to feel special. We want it to feel personal and we want it to feel local.
Yeah. Well, and we're going to talk about this because in the Asana community, it's not about growing like generating leads or growing basket size, or we'll talk about engagement and how it's actually like essential to your mission as global head of engagement marketing. Let's talk. Let's keep talking about fun a little bit. How do you delight your ambassadors? So you mentioned that you try to make everyone belong and make sure that the experience is fit for them. But what else is there to drive engagement among your community?
Yeah, to drive the fun part, we do lots of, I would say, surprise and delight elements. They're not surprises for us because we plan them, but I think people experience them as surprises. So we'll send out like on people's 1 year anniversary of being part of the program. We'll send them a little swag pack. We'll celebrate them in the Slack group or in the forum or on our webinars. We give people the opportunity to earn swag along the way. We send people swag when they join. Everyone loves swag, but we found that people want a lot of it, which is great. They love our brand. They want our elements. That's totally fine. But we give them essentially their own shopping experience where the more they participate in the community, the more swag bucks we give them, and then they can order directly from our members only swag store. So we have custom swag created just for members that aren't available to the general public. So it's things like this where once people feel really invested in your product, and especially if they feel invested in your brand, they're going to want literal physical pieces of it. And the more of this that you can create that feels special to them, not just the standard company t-shirt with your logo on it, but maybe something that's a little different brand for your community, that's where they really start to feel like, oh, I'm part of something special. Like we have the Asana logo, but then we have the Asana Together logo also that we created in conjunction with the brand team. And this is where people really start to feel a sense of belonging. We've seen people take pictures of their swag and post it on social. We've seen them distribute swag amongst their team and use it at team events. So these are the types of things that it's like, oh, I'm part of a special program. This is pretty cool. I want to share this stuff with people around me. And that's where we really get that advocacy that we're talking about. It is fun and it serves a purpose.
It is a big achievement because we're talking about a work management platform. So
Yeah, not
like
sexy.
it doesn't sound too sexy from the get-go.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's amazing. Well done. And we touched on it earlier. Like you've been balancing on-site and offline events as well. Tell us a bit more about your tour, your event series, and how
Yeah,
you
so
balance that with online.
yeah, so my team runs the Asana Together World Tour, which is the tour that we created for the community. In the before times, the before COVID world, we were doing all of our events in person. I have a small but very mighty team, And we would go around the world, literally physically, for a very large chunk of our time and run around 200 events in person per year. We would group them by city. So we would essentially do city tours where we would host 4 or 5 events over the course of a week in one city, and then move on to the next one. We would do this region by region to make things a little more scalable. In the COVID world, we of course shifted all of our events to the virtual world. We kept a similar format, but changed the duration, time of day to make it better suited to the virtual world. But it's the same spirit, same general format. We still do the illustrations. In the before times when we were going in person, we would bring like a pop-up sign where people could take pictures with it. One of our brand elements is the Yeti. It's a very like cute little animal. We would bring the Yeti with us and give people the opportunity to do like a photo booth style where we would take instant photos of it and then give it to them. And people love this. And it was so fun for us and for the team to see all of the interaction that people had with Asana, the brand, as well as with us, the Asana people, at these events, and moreover, with each other, with other customers at events. And so, as we are transitioning back into hopefully a post ish COVID world, we're exploring what the new world of hybrid combining with in person events will look like. Still TBD. I don't know that anyone has solved this particular challenge yet, but we are definitely thinking about it and working on it. Oh, Paul came to one of our events. Yes, swag. This
Well
is the type
done.
of thing that we create for
Well,
folks.
you also you had an amazing idea as well to surprise and delight your members in Paris a few years back by hosting an event on a rooftop
Yeah,
and letting them climb up the stairs.
yeah. So we hosted an event pre-COVID in Paris. Amazing location, beautiful rooftop venue. The day of the event, and this falls under the when you host an event, everything that can go wrong usually goes wrong category. The day of the event, the elevator broke. This was an event that was held on the 7th floor of this building. We had all of the catering, all of the beer, all of the wine, all of the water, soft drinks. My team and I had to carry it all the way up the stairs, up and down many times right before the event. The event went off without a hitch. People really enjoyed it. Little did they know how much my team and I were literally sweating in the middle of Parisian summer to make sure that they had a good
That's how
experience.
much you care about your members, making sure that they do
That's
exercise when they come to your
that
party.
is part of the gig. We want people to not only learn how to use Asana, but also stay healthy while they're doing it. So getting them to go up and down the stairs was a benefit. It was a feature,
Well
not a
done.
bug.
Well done. Well done. You have to host another event in Paris and we can experience that.
Very much looking forward to that.
Terrific. I know you don't like talking too much about return on investment because it's back to numbers you're not allowed to share. But
Yeah.
and there's more to this actually because when we prepared for this talk, you said, well, um, like community ROI can take many forms. So let's dive into this. So what's the ROI of Asana together?
Yeah, so I think it's useful to think about the context first. So, community usually sits within a few different departments. Sometimes it's in support, sometimes it's within customer success, sometimes within sales, sometimes within marketing. What your ROI, what your metric on would look significantly different depending on which department you come from because the perspective is different. If you sit within support, oftentimes it's looked at from the community perspective as what is the support deflection of community? I don't sit within support, I sit within marketing. So I'm looking at things like advocacy, awareness, and engagement. My actual title is Head of Global Engagement Marketing. So I'm looking at things like are people using the product more after they come to one of our events, let's say? Is there a delta between people who are part of our program and people who are not in terms of their usage, retention, and advocacy of Asana? And so luckily we're seeing all of those things as a result of our program. But there are many other things that we look at. I like to think of community metrics and ROI through two lenses. You need to look at your community program health. Those are the things that you and your team care about as you're checking on the pulse of your program, like how many members you have, what's the activity rate of people within your program. Those are things that you want to look at to see how is my program doing. Then you want to look at what are the business impact metrics. This is where you start speaking the language of the rest of the company so that they can easily understand the impact of what it is you and your team are doing. These things are related, the program health and business impact, but they're not the same. And I think
Mm.
community builders tend to focus on the program health metrics, like how many people attended our event, rather than what was the pipeline generated from our event, or what's the delta between people who attended versus didn't in their actual usage of the product.
What's
These
the
are
call
the things that
deflection
the
and
rest
so
of the
on?
business cares about, right? So
Yeah.
when we talk about ROI, you need to start thinking about it in those terms. Like, what do I care about as a program leader, and what does the business care about? And that's what you start discussing with the broader company.
And clearly, you're doing really well on the metric of how many people keep using your notebooks months after the event. Well done.
Yes, definitely engaging with the brand.
Paul.
Thank you.
Kudos to Paul.
Well done.
Terrific. We've had a pretty good chat so far, Josh. I'm gonna ruin it all. We're gonna start bumping heads for the last question.
Yeah.
We love talking about community-led growth. In fact, we keep talking about it, and we've been pretty vocal on social, trying to evangelize this concept. And when I brought the question to you during the prep talk, you said, "Well, I don't believe in community-led growth." So, all right, game on.
Okay. Yeah. It's not that I don't think community is important. I mean, I'm a community leader with a sizable community team. I think it's very important. I think it's a false distinction to say that community led growth is the only and most important thing. I think it's really everything led growth, because you need a really solid product that people really love and believe in, that actually works and is meaningful to them. You need a really effective marketing organization to build brand awareness and to get people excited about participating in your brand and your product at all. You need a support team that can help when customers have a challenge. And you need a sales team that can help interface with customers who are thinking of purchasing your product but may have a complex buying process. And of course, you need a community to connect the dots between all of these things. So I think community led growth is really interesting, but I don't think it's the only thing that leads to growth. And so, having worked in large, complex organizations where there are many moving parts, all of which lead towards growth, I think it would be wrong for me to say that community led growth is the only and most important thing. I think it's a critical element. And I think of it as more of community influenced, community assisted growth, because
Mm.
you need all these other pieces in play also. Otherwise, if you have a great community, but there's no product, what is it? What is it that you're growing? Or if you have a great community, but your buying process is actually quite complex and you have multiple decision makers, they need to talk to someone in sales. Sales is also contributing to growth. So it's not that I don't think community led growth is important, but I wouldn't frame it as such. And I certainly wouldn't frame it as the only thing. I think part of this notion is the world of community building is still pretty new. Historically, community has been limited to support forums, but as we're entering a world where community sits within marketing or within sales or in more revenue focused areas or in more branding focused areas, I think we as community builders are still trying to figure out, like, how do we identify ourselves and how do we show our importance to the rest of the org. And so I think this notion of like chief community officer or community led growth, I think these are just ways for us to figure out how to brand ourselves. It doesn't mean that what we're doing isn't important. It is, otherwise I wouldn't be doing it. But I think as we mature as professionals in this space and as the community space itself continues to mature, I think we're going to find more nuanced, less bang the drum, beat the chest kind of ways of sharing our level of importance within an organization.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's super interesting. The reason I think community builders have been banging that drum is also that for the first time, probably in the last I don't know 15 years, community has been essential to the development of product. We've talked about product-led growth for the last 10 years, and now that community can actually come on top of the product and come before the product. And you need sometimes to release new features and test them out, you need to have a community, and that's why I think community leaders want to push forward the concept of community-led growth. But
I get it. I just disagree.
let's just agree to disagree then.
The great thing is,
No,
in
that makes
the
perfect sense.
community space of community professionals, we don't actually all need to think the same way in order to do our jobs
Yeah,
effectively and
absolutely.
for us to come together and connect with one another.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. Thank you so much. I think we're getting close to the end of this interview. Is there any practical tips that you wanna share with the community builders that are listening?
Yeah, I would say don't forget to make sure that your community has some fun elements in it. I've been part of many communities that I've explored where it's very, very dry. And I want to make sure that we remember that people do like to enjoy themselves. And I encourage everyone to think of, if we could change one thing in our program and make it a little more fun, what would a little more fun look like? What's the slightly more fun version of what we're creating? What would make our space a little more enjoyable for people and not just transactional? So tactically, I would have a brainstorming session maybe with a few key members of your community, along with your team or you yourself if you're a solo professional, to think of like, hey, we want to inject more fun. What might that look like? What would make this more enjoyable for you, customer? They'll tell you what you want to know. It's up to you then to act on it.
That's great. The invites already got out to my team to make our Melting Spot community more fun. So thanks for this very precious tip. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you bet.
Thank you everyone for tuning in. It's the end of this interview. I want to thank Josh for your time. It's been really very insightful.
My
Thank you,
pleasure.
Josh.
Thank you for
We'll be
having me.
welcoming Susan Tenby from TechSoup, another fellow Californian, next week, same time, next Thursday. So feel free to join. And thanks again, Josh. Next time you're in Paris, please drop by, and you can use the elevator.
I'll be going up and down on the elevator once I find it. Absolutely. Thanks so
Thank you
much.
so
Thanks.
much. Have a terrific day, and thanks again for your insights.
Absolutely.
Cheers,
Thank
Josh.
you for
Bye
having
bye.
me.
I'll talk to you backstage. Cheers.